Welcome to Black History Month. I want to welcome you into this space. And now, for the first time ever, you are going to gain a special insight into the philosophy and opinions of one of the greatest men to have ever walked this earth. We've been celebrating a remarkable life and legacy throughout the 31 days of October as we bring you the resurrection of Marcus Mosiah Garvey, a series which will be presented by me, Jermaine Brown, featuring 31 brothers from across our community, all chosen to resurrect different speeches, articles and essays from Marcus Garvey daily. Now, before we get into today's main speech, here's some important information that you need to know about the man, the myth, the movement and the legend. Marcus Mosiah Garvey was the founder and organizer of the largest independent black movement in the world, the Universal Negro Improvement Association and the African Communities League. At the heights of success, the organization had a worldwide membership of over 11 million subscribed members. Now this was an excellent feat, especially when we consider that this happened during a time of no smartphones, no internet and no social media, and during the midst of 2 world wars. Yet he dared to travel the world, even to non-English speaking regions, spreading his message of self-love and empowerment. Now this was at a time when it was particularly dangerous for black men and women to wander outside of their own homes. But these factors did not stop the man and the movement, for he had at his disposal an unmatched confidence. He did not fear failure. He did not care about the laughter and the ridicule hurled at him, for he had a fearless passion for the advancement of black people worldwide that fueled his mission. Now I'm intrigued to know more about the mind of this man and how he accomplished so much. What can I take from him that I can apply to my life today? I wonder. This is program 24 of our series. Today's speech was delivered on September the 2nd, 1928. We go over to the Century Theatre, Westbourne Grove in London, UK's capital. This speech is titled Marcus Garvey Speaks. Today's narration is by Bishop Dr. Desmond Jadu from Birmingham, UK.
You are listening to an honor level production featuring the Resurrection of Marcus Mosiah Garvey series.
Mr. Chairman, ladies and gentlemen, fellow citizens, it was your Shakespeare who said, "There is a tide in the affairs of men, which taken at the flood, loads unto fortune, omitted all the voyage of their life, is bound in shallows and in miseries. On such a full sea are we now afloat, and we must take the current when it serves or lose our ventures." Humanity is in the remaking, and every group is interesting itself in that remaking. I represent a group of 400 million black people who are engaged in this remaking, hundreds of millions of them in Africa, over 100 million of them in India, relics of the African invasion of the earliest centuries, millions of them in South America, descendants of the slaves of the millions in Central America, and millions more in the country known as the United States of America, and also the Isles of the West Indies, one of which I am from, known as Jamaica. We are very much interested in your talk about peace. We are very much interested in your sentimental discussions of the future of the world. Just a few days ago, Mr. Kellogg, a good old man from the United States of America, journeyed across the Atlantic with a bit of paper. His purpose was to secure signatures to a pact. The object of it was outlawing war and permanently establishing peace. To the thoughtful mind, to the sober intellect, the whole thing appears so hypocritical and false that I wonder really what is coming to the world. Those of us who have followed the trend of human events within the last half century know well and fully realize how corrupt the world is, especially the statesmanship of the world. A great era of hypocrisy we never had than that of the statesmanship of the 20th century. How in the name of goodness, intelligent men who claim to be leaders of great groups can imagine that they can, just by signing a bit of paper and making a few statements, put to rest the hopes of millions of downtrodden and oppressed peoples is something marvelous. Who does not want peace? Everyone wants peace. The black man wants peace, probably more than anyone else, because up to now for the last 3,000 years, he has been a man of peace. The proof of which is that today you find him without any battleships or navy, without any standing army, without any big guns, and without any system by which we can take other people's rights or lives. Look around, and wherever you find a black man, he is a man of peace. So do not mistake me that I am for war. I am not. I am out for human justice. And I am sensible enough to know that so long as the robber retains the loot, the man who has lost his property cannot be at peace with his vicious neighbor or with anyone else whom he suspects. How in the name of goodness do you expect you can have peace in the world when you keep down 400 million Indians, when you keep down 400 million other black people, grind the blood and sweat out of them, kick them from pillar to post? Is it not a farce when you declare for peace without taking these people into consideration? Who represented the Indians at the signing of this peace pact? Not an Indian. Who represented the Africans at the signing of this peace pact? Not an African. Yet the lands of these people have been taken away from them. Their homes have been ravaged, and those men think they are so smart that they can sign a bit of paper and all these black people will remain quiet for eternity. They are crazy. I am here representing 400 million black men who are serious, peaceably serious, in that we intend to adopt different means to achieve our ends than you have adopted. You have adopted shot and shell, brute force, to attain all that you have accomplished. And when a summary is to be taken and when a judgment is to be passed, Englishmen, I hope you so act in the 20th century that the crimes of the past will not stand against you. You believe in God, you say, and he is to be the final judge of all men. Do you desire your God to judge you by your brute force, by your shot and shell, by your battleships and your dreadnoughts, and by your aeroplanes and the crimes you have committed, or by the kindliness of your souls? You taught us about the God that we worship today. We had a different notion of God in earlier centuries. It was the same being, only we worship him through objects we selected. And then you came and you said, no, you must worship him in spirit and in truth. We accepted your philosophy of God. We believe in him. We believe he is the God of love, of mercy, of justice. We have adopted that fine philosophy of approaching him and all things human through reason, through judgment, and through brotherly and fatherly love. That is why I am here today, not as an admiral, not as a general of the army we could have been, but as a fellow human being, appealing to your reason and to your humanity and to your love of God, truth and justice. We 400 million black people desire, late though it be, to restore ourselves to the company of nations with honor, so that we may show the way to the real peace about which these commercial statesmen are talking today, but do not mean except to the extent of more oil monopolies, more diamond monopolies, more rubber concessions, more disarming of the weaker peoples whose lands are so valuable as to supply them, the monopolists, with the resources and wealth that they need. Mr. Kellogg came from America to hand in his suggestions about outlawing war. Yet America today is doing what? America is doing the very thing that foments war. What America would not dare do to a powerful empire like Britain. What America would not dare do to a powerful nation like France. What America would not do to a powerful nation like Italy. Partners in signing this peace pact. America without any reserve does to Nicaragua and does to Haiti. How preposterous, therefore, for intelligent men to think that there can be any seriousness in discussing peace. One of the principal agents for bringing about peace is doing the very thing that is the principal agency for provoking war. That is not only so of America, it is so of all the great powers. I need not bring to you any information about the conduct of our own empire, because as Englishmen, you know as much as I do, and probably more than I do, about the attitude of the whole government towards the subject peoples in Africa and in India. We are not all asleep. It is not because we have not statesmen as able as yours. You have not read our sentiments in your daily papers, and we have not reached the point yet where you will come in daily contact with that sentiment and with that expression, but the future will bring it to you. We want it to come to you without any surprise. And it is because of that why we are endeavoring to prepare you now to realize that the whole world is not so foolish, not so ignorant, and not so asleep as to think that everything is well and will remain well, when in fact the larger number of humanity is struggling beyond your knowledge in a terrible state and condition that you would not like even dogs or pigs to be in. There was a great howl in England about unemployment and about the condition of the poor. If you want to see the poor, go to Africa. If you want to see the poor, go to India. Go to the West Indies and the southern states of America, where men's souls are driven out of them, where their bodies are harassed beyond the physical condition of the brute, to add to the wealth of the great capitalists who stand behind your statesmen and say, a bigger navy, a bigger army, for the protection of the empire. But it is not for the protection of the empire. It is for the purpose of keeping down these unhappy millions in India and Africa and elsewhere, so that these few capitalists can continue to grind the last bit of sweat and the last drop of blood out of other human beings. Do you think that contributes to an order whereby we can all feel happy? Impossible! And I represent today a large group of unhappy people who have not spoken yet. I lived in America for 14 years, where I was elected as the head of an organization known as the Universal Negro Improvement Association, which seeks for the higher development of the black race universally. Because I was elected to the position, I had to fill it. I had to speak not only my sentiments, but the sentiments of the organization. As I spoke it in America, so I am speaking it here today. I have personal views of my own, views of fellowship, views of Christian brotherhood with everyone, and I have no enemy in the world. Whether a man be white, yellow, brown, or black, if I know nothing about him, to the contrary, I think of him as a Christian brother, and I treat him as such. I therefore do not want you to think that I am expressing my own personal opinion. I am expressing the opinion of 11 million aggrieved Negroes. I being only one of the 11 million. The 11 million represent 400 million. When I talk, I am not talking for myself. I am talking for those millions of dissatisfied people. Those people who are ground down in every part and every section of the world. If you go to the West Indies, you will see them. If you go to Central America, you will see them struggling under the burden of the day. If you go to South America, you will see them smarting under the burden imposed upon them. If you go to East Africa, you will see them outraged by the colonialists. If you go to South Africa, you will see them brutalized by a soulless and heartless government under the leadership of Mr. Herzog, a man without a soul where the native is concerned. If you go to West Africa, you will see them struggling to free themselves and to be men. If you go to America, you will see them lynched and burnt by white mob prejudice and violence. But under the skillful diplomacy of those who do not desire to see them really free men and whose motives and efforts are directed towards keeping them serfs rather than seeing them develop and becoming a free and independent people as they ought to be, they are being misrepresented. Those are the people I represent. Those are the people who give me an expression. And so long as these people remain in such a terrible condition as human beings, so long will I go throughout the length and breadth of the world, whether it be in America or in Great Britain or any part of the European continent, to let humanity know the truth. I spoke this truth in America for 14 years, as I have said, and all those who were inimical to the interests of Negro progress could do was to undermine me and frame me up and imprison me for nearly 2 years and 10 months, thinking that would be a deterrent, not only to my expressions on behalf of the Negroes, but that would be a means of scaring Negroes from continuing agitation for freedom. Fools that they are, who know that prison bars cannot deaden or kill the souls and minds of men. Fools that they are, who do not realize that there is no power on earth to suppress the hopes of men. They may imprison men by the million, they may execute them by the thousand, as they did to you before you became a free people, as they have done to the continental nations which have risen through stages of barbarism to what they are. But they shall never stop the machine of progress, because that is evolutionary. The black man is in a state similar to yours when you were slaves of another people. You know your history as Englishmen too well not to appreciate the stand we take in working towards the freedom of our country, Africa. In a previous speech at the Albert Hall, I tried to impress you with the history of slavery, how your people took mine from their homes in Africa to strange lands of the Western world and kept them as slaves for 250 years, kept not only our bodies in slavery, but kept our souls in slavery, millions of us, through the good graces of others of your own race who had more human love and sympathy than your predecessors, notably Victoria of England and Abraham Lincoln of America. We were emancipated and became free men, but even under freedom, we are being robbed and exploited and brutalized the world over to an alarming extent and degree. It is to acquaint you of this that I have been sent to England to speak to you at these public meetings, to speak to you by other approaches, as I have done, to gather your opinion and sentiment touching not only your future, but the future of the darker peoples who you dominate. It is pleasant for me to state that I have had some very good responses from some of the most representative men in the country, men with souls. Not all of your representatives are heartless. Some of your men, known in public life, sympathize with the conditions of black men in Africa, the West Indies and America. Those are the men who really save your civilization. Those are the men who really make history better for those of you who have no hearts and those of you who will not think. Because those of you who will not think are equally responsible with those of you who have no heart and act without a heart, because by that action other people are impelled to think unkindly of you. For when you do not instruct your representatives to think and act in the way they should, we think unkindly not only of them but also of you. So we are glad there is a softening of feeling when we can find men and women in England who are sympathetic and responsive to the call of others of the human family for help, so that they also may enjoy the benefit of the creation which was given to us by God in common. Otherwise, your history in contact with other peoples would be a terrible one. Do not ever make the mistake, Englishmen and women, that you are always going to have the last word in civilization and in the world. There were other peoples before you. There were black people who gave the first civilization. The black people of Africa, they came before you. They had a wonderful civilization on the banks of the Nile. When the Blue Nile and the White Nile were dotted by universities, by the highest development in art, when Africa right up to Timbuktu represented the finest culture the world ever saw, your ancestors were living in caves, were living in holes, were savages, were running wild in the continent of Europe. The black man passed out of power, giving it to the brown race. The Indians passed it to the Persians and the Chinese, and they in turn, through the same progress of evolution, passed it on to you. The same cycle is going on, and whether you will it or not, with your battleships and with your dreadnoughts, it will evolve back to another condition. You cannot stop it. It is the force of nature. It is the force of God. You smile and say God, and yet you teach me about God. You say God when you believe in science. We believe in him. And when that God, in his prophecy, says, princes shall come out of Egypt, Ethiopia shall soon stretch out her arms unto God. We do not take it as a mockery nor as a joke, nor that he made a mistake. He placed us here, and we are here. We believe in that God. That God has brought us out of slavery without any machine guns. Some colonialists interested in Africa had the nerve to tell me the other day that if it were not for the white people, the Negroes would have died years ago in East Africa. Sentimentally, the thing would appeal to the man who does not think. But how foolish it is for a man to make such a statement when without the white man, the Negro lived by himself in Africa, and today we have at least 200 million people in Africa who preserved them until the white man came. Yet he is telling us that the black man cannot live in East Africa without the white people. That kind of diplomacy is played out and looks foolish to the new thought that permeates the Negro. There is nothing you can tell the black man that he doesn't know. It is true, we have to listen to what you say, but it does not mean that we entirely believe it. You are capable of making any statements you like. Your statesman can make them, but it does not follow that we are to accept them. It is true that we have no medium for expressing ourselves because your press does not express our feelings and opinions on the matter. It expresses yours. That is why you are in such a peculiar state, because you are hearing only your opinion, one side only. You know only your side. You do not hear the opinion of the people on the other side, and you do not know what they are thinking about. I am here to tell you what we are thinking about. We are thinking about our rights as human beings, and we are liberal in doing that. We realize that all human beings are entitled to certain rights, and there are no rights peculiar to the white man which we desire to invade. We feel that the white man has certain rights that are natural, that are moral, that are legal, and we would be as ready and as quick as himself to defend him and those rights as he would. If you doubt me, I bring up the history of the war in which we fought for you. Did you think you could buy us to fight for you in the 19th and 20th centuries? Do you think you could pay us to fight for you? No, you could not. But when you made your statement and your appeal for help, when you based that statement and appeal on the larger democracy and humanity, as Woodrow Wilson did in the last war, the protection of the weaker peoples, that appeal touched our hearts, and without any conscription, without any begging us to help, we voluntarily came to your aid in the last war. 2 million of us. And we fought like bloodhounds in Mesopotamia. We fought like mad dogs in East Africa. We fought like frenzied men on the various battlefronts in France and Flanders. And we never laid down our arms or rested our heads until we threw the Germans across the Rhine and brought back to you the salvation of your civilization. We trusted you without asking for reward before we entered, thinking that you were honest and upright in your profession of protecting the rights of weaker peoples. We came out of the war leaving in Flanders our dead, leaving in Mesopotamia our dead. Then we asked you for consideration, and you said to us in England, there is no employment for black men. If you happen to be here, we will not give you work, but we may give you a little dole for a short while, on which you cannot live, but we will make sure you will get no permanent employment, and so after a while you will die, a discouragement for every black man to come to England and the British Isles. You said to us in continental Europe, there is no room in Europe for the black man, except continue to use him as a soldier in the Rhineland to protect France. When I was accused in Germany of helping to defeat Germany, and therefore encourage the enmity of Germany towards the blacks, I felt ashamed that the Germans should accuse me of leaving my home in the West Indies and Africa and America to come into Europe to kill him when he did not interfere with me as far as that was concerned. I felt ashamed, and I had to hang my head. But I was doing the best I could to help someone whom I trusted, the Allies. And while the German now hates me because I helped to defeat him, the friend for whom I fought, causing me to offend the Germans, leaves me in the cold. and therefore I am still more friendless. I have two enemies now instead of a friend. Is it not a peculiar state to be in? Englishmen, that is the position. We feel very unpleasant about it, and we do not feel happy having it all pent up in our minds. That is why we want you to know about it quite inoffensively. I hope you will not take anything I have said today as an offence. God forbid. The truth should offend no man except the villain and the vagabond. You are all Christian people and cannot be offended by what I have said. Now, you English people, how would you feel if a foreign race, not like yours, should come in here and take everything you have? Take away your parliament, take away your Westminster Abbey, take away your University of London, your St. Paul's, your museums, your art galleries, take away all your industries, take away your land, take charge of you, take your shoes off your feet, take your good clothes off your backs, and give you rags to wear, and place heavy loads upon your shoulders by way of everyday labour so that you can work for them? How would you like that? Would you like that? I want an answer from you. Would you like that? I am asking you a question. Would you like that? I am sorry to be embarrassing, but it seems like you would like it. If you would like it, my appeal falls flat, because you agree that someone else should do that. But I do not believe that your silence means agreement. You could not agree with a condition like that. But that is what you are doing to us in Africa. You have come into our homes, deceived us in every way under the guise of Christianity. But do not you ever believe I am not a Christian? I believe in God the Father, God the Son, and God the Holy Ghost. I endorse the Nicene Creed. I believe that Jesus died for me. I believe God lives for me as for all men. And no condition you can impose on me by deceiving me about Christianity will cause me to doubt Jesus Christ and to doubt God. I shall never hold Christ or God responsible for the commercialization of Christianity by the heartless men who adopt it as the easiest means of fooling and robbing other people out of their land and country. If I told you the history of the London Missionary Society, which is followed by the commercial agent and the soldier, you would really try to ask God for pardon for the things that have been done to the poor, defenseless heathens in the name of Christianity. Have you ever stopped, Englishmen, to read the record of your Christian penetration of the East and the results of it? I want to set you thinking, you Englishmen and women, because I believe the majority of you are good at heart and you do not know. And that is why you smile complacently on things as they happen today. Go to your libraries and read the history of Christianity in lands of the heathens and compare those lands today and the condition of the peoples there in the 20th century with the period prior to the advent of Christianity. Practically every African will tell you today that prior to the advent of Christianity, he had his own land. He owned it. He lived on it. But today, because of Christianity, it is not his, it is the Lord's. What a terrible law that is, to adopt such methods to take away the property of other peoples. Now you know there is no Lord like that. And because that is the result, some of us have changed our opinions and our desires about Christianity. But I have not changed because I am sensible enough and intelligent enough to know that the Lord never intended that as an attitude of those who profess his faith towards others to be brought within the pale of his doctrine. I really want to see a universal spirit of Christianity, of brotherly love, when all men would be willing to greet each other in sympathy and love. But today, because of the peculiar statesmanship that rules the world, there is only enough thought for a certain type of race and group of people, and without them, there is no consideration for the rest of humanity. That is not fair. Yet we have the Pope and we have the Archbishop of Canterbury, the two primary representatives of Christianity. How do they think they have impressed us who have learnt to think? How do they think we compare their philosophy with human reason? It is illogical. It is ridiculous. And because they have spoken of themselves, and we have not spoken, they think it is all right. Now we have started to speak, and I am the only forerunner of an awakened Africa that shall never go back to sleep. Remember, I am not speaking for myself. If I were to speak for myself, I believe I would be a preacher. I would be a devout man after the fashion of Jesus Christ. That is how I would like to move about the world, because I have a deep feeling for humanity in my soul. But I cannot be myself just now because I have been elected by 11 million people to express their thoughts. And I would be a traitor to my oath of service if I did not speak to you as they command me and as they demand of me. I speak so that you may know the truth. The truth will set you free and set them free. We want an everlasting peace, not an hypocritical peace that a few aged men who have been trained in the school of commercial graft think of. Their interests are closely allied with their brothers and fellows in similar pecuniary positions like themselves, that they cannot see justice outside their immediate needs and desires. They do not suffer like common men. Therefore, they cannot interpret the feelings of common men. When Mr. Kellogg comes to represent the American people, really, he does not represent the American people. He represents about 500 millionaires in America, of whom he is one. He represents a man like Mr. Mellon, one of the richest men in the world with hundreds of millions of dollars to protect. Such a man wants peace. He would be a fool if he did not want peace, when there are millions of his own countrymen who cannot find bread for the next day. Those latter are the people who are dissatisfied. And these men who represent these great commercial interests say, we have to get together, or we will have so much at stake, because these fellows will get unruly. So we must have bigger armies and bigger navies. So when these other fellows want to give vent to their grievances, we will let loose these armies and navies for the preservation of the state. But it is not for the preservation of the state, but for the protection of these few men with hoarded millions. Left alone, we would not require such a tremendous overhead expense for navies and armies. But it is the desire of those who have so much, more than they should have, why we have to pay these high rates for armies and navies, to keep in subjugation people about whom we do not know anything. I am appealing to you for a larger sympathy. Do not misunderstand me, Englishmen and Englishwomen. I am not a fomenter of trouble. I love humanity too much to advocate any disturbance that would make humanity unhappy. I am the head of a great organization and know what order is. Sometimes I am in the midst of 25,000 in a convention, and as the head of a strong organization, I must have order and discipline. Do not interpret anything I say as a suggestion of any kind of disorder amongst black or white. It is only an effort to present the truth, because it is only by this truth that we can have an everlasting and eternal peace. We want you Englishmen and Englishwomen to know that the people of India have souls like you. They have passions like you. They are human beings who must live like you. They must have the same attention like you. They must live in good homes and be able to preserve their bodies in a sanitary state. They must have good food in order to maintain their physical strength. They must have advantages and opportunities so that life can be made pleasant. What is life with eternal misery? And that is what you, by the power of your empire, impose upon us. Eternal misery. Good God, what a day it will be when black, brown, yellow and white meet before that great throne which Christian men have taught us about, for you to pass your judgment. Good God, shall we go to another hell other than the hell we are in now, in India and in Africa? Oh God, it will be too much for us to bear. I ask your presence at this meeting today to touch the hearts of English men and women, so that those who are innocent and know not what is being done in their name may understand and reach the point where they will use their influence to see that justice is done to darker peoples of the world. I have not yet approached your government and my government because you have made me by compulsion a British subject, when by election I would be an African citizen. Your government is my government. I hope to approach our government in a short while, to lay before them certain facts upon which I am endeavouring to enlighten you. I have not approached them yet because I want to test your sentiment, because I know the government will do nothing except it is with your approval. Therefore, it is better judgment and good sense to find out how you feel first before going to your executives who represent you in government, so as to know what will be the future of the blacks of Africa. There is no future for us in the Western world. You Anglo-Saxons, who became the Americans of today across the Atlantic, took us into slavery after it was introduced by the Portuguese under the influence of Pope Nicholas V, and took us to America and kept us there as slaves. Though you worked us to death, 4 million survived, and in 60 years we have grown to 15 million. And now in America, white statesmanship is devising ways and means by which they can, by economic starvation, starve out the Negroes in 50 years so they will have no more Negro problem. In the last 60 years, they have had enough immigration from the European countries to be able to do without blacks who have brought America up to where she is today. See how ungrateful a certain branch of your race is, after using us for 250 years as slaves and for 50 years as peons and serfs. Now that there is a white population in America sufficiently strong to develop the future of America without the black man, they have evolved a system of economic pressure so that the Negro cannot earn enough money to pay the high cost of living, and it is only a question of 50 or 100 years before voluntarily the Negro, by means of economic starvation, will die out in America, and there will be no more Negro problem to confront the white man who wants to make America a white man's country. That is the silent method of men like Kellogg, men without souls where struggling humanity is concerned, men who think they have the last word in intelligence and can fool everyone. Do not forget that the Negro is the greatest diplomat the world has ever seen. It may be immodest to me to say so, but if it had not been for our diplomacy, we should not have survived, but should have died like the North American Indian. You are dealing with a people who were the first teachers of diplomacy, because we were the first teachers of civilization. We have not lost all our virtues, although we have slept on them for a long while, but that does not mean death. We were only resting. Today our intellect is virile and strong, and that is why I say you cannot pull the leg of a half-dead cow with impunity. It may develop into a healthier heifer later if it gets the right kind of pasturage, and although you may look upon the black man as insignificant, you do not know what is in the Negro's mind. Why? We have the same playground for science as any other race. Do you know that there are mysteries hidden in Africa that have not been unearthed for the last 3,000 years because the time has not come yet? You have been digging up some of the things we have done in Africa. You have been to Luxor to dig up Tutankhamun's tomb and so on. When you find these signs of civilization, you are artful enough to say they belong to a different branch of the human race. Yet you have not been skillful enough when you say that to prove it. The features of the pharaohs make them nothing else but black men. You assume a right to write history within the last 500 years, and simply because you have been able to dump so many tons of your history in the world, and other people have not said anything by way of complaint. You think your history rests there, but a lot of things your Mr. Wells has said, we Negroes treat as bunk. Mr. H.G. Wells may divert civilization for the benefit of his Anglo-Saxon group, but that does not make it the fact that the people who laid claims to the civilization he attributed to others are going to give them up easily. The black man knows his past. It is a past of which he can be nobly proud. That is why I stand before you today, a proud black man honored to be a black man who would be nothing else in God's creation but a black man. I have nothing to be ashamed of. Surely I shall not be ashamed of my God who made me what I am. It is said that the group I represent is looking for social equality. We do not want any social equality except with ourselves, but we look for social freedom from everyone and we will return it to them. But we do not want to take charge of your social life and to embarrass you in your social life if you feel like being among yourselves. We are too proud to embarrass anyone but ourselves. So we want you to understand that the time has come for us both, black and white, to be more serious in our thoughts about each other, because some of you white men think we are animals. They have given you pictures of us with rings through our noses, big mouths and ugly features, and they say, that is a black man. So that when a child sees a black man in a railway station, he shouts, Mama, Mama, look, black man. But that is the wrong kind of education, because black men have the future in their making. And when you grow up with wrong notions and ideas, you may get yourselves into the state of attempting to deal with black men like brutes instead of like men. As evidence of it, you send out to the colonies some of your colonial administrators, men whom you have trained in your schools to think that the black man is not to be considered. And when they come out in their khaki uniforms, they look as cockish as the Maharajas of Mysore. And when we approach them, they want us to take off our hats and to bow and cringe before them. That kind of attitude is of the past. Black men are not going to cringe before anyone but God. Black men have learnt the value of life, the value of self-respect like white men. We realize that you are men like ourselves and we are men like you. We intend to give you a man's share and we demand the same from you. It is a 50-50 proposition. There is nothing in England that we black people want but to see English people prosper and continue until God calls you. A happy people within the British Isles. And we want to be left alone in our own country, Africa, to develop as God and we ourselves see best. That is all we are asking for. If we live like that, there will not be any trouble. If we want anything in England, we either send over and get it or come over and get it. You come over to us and find out what we want and sell us what we want. If we have no coal, we buy coal from you, and so on. If we not have the materials with which to manufacture cloth and so on, we get them from you. But what we have got, that you have not got, you must buy from us and not steal. What right have you to expect me to come across to the street, to your home or to your shop and buy milk and butter and ham and bacon and fat and oil and bread and pay you 2 sovereigns, whereas if you want cloth and coal, you come in my backyard and steal it? Do you know what will happen to you? You will be caught one day. That is what happens to a thief who steals in the lark. And we are only saying to the white people of Europe, do not be so sentimental as to imagine that the other people are still so blind as not to be able to see that they are being unfairly dealt with. You are very skillful. You adopt peculiar methods when you find native people advanced to the extent that they have representative men who can express the thoughts of the masses. You have a peculiar method of diplomacy whereby you weave certain things around them to frame them up, to get them incriminated in some way so that you can do something to them and say, he is a criminal. He has been to prison. He cannot represent you. You tried that game with me, but it did not work with the Negroes. I went to prison because of the cunning and stealing propensities of low-down politicians who would put Jesus Christ in jail for 2 votes. I can talk about American politics because I've lived in the midst for 14 years and studied it from A to Z. I can tell you of the damnable methods of the American white politicians, the methods they will use to get into office. An American white politician would sell his own family. He would sell the whole state. He would sell the name of Jesus Christ across the ballot box so that he could get into office. Because I represented an honorable moral movement where I would not pay politicians to keep me at the head, they were able to imprison me. And especially because I was a British subject, it made it easier for them to dispose of me. They thought, when they imprisoned me, that they had finally disposed of me. But, fortunately for me, they had given our movement a momentum of 1,000%. And today my movement is known in all parts of the world. And though an Englishman may treat my words with levity and think I am a fool, as newspapers like the Daily Sketch try to make out, you will find 10 years from now or 100 years from now, Garvey was not an idle buffoon, but was representing the new vision of the Negro who was looking forward to great accomplishments in the future. I bless you as God would have me bless you, with goodwill, no enmity or malice, only with a desire for you to know the truth. You have heard the one side from your own men. You must hear the other side from the other people. You must hear India's side. You must hear Africa's side. Unfortunately, it is my good fortune now to speak for Africa. And I feel that at some other time you will hear from India. Let us have a better understanding to know each other better, and I think we will have a better world. I'm going to close in 5 minutes of this application. I am not an Englishman by race. I am a Britisher by nationality, just as you are true to your Anglo-Saxon race and type, and you would be unworthy if you were not. So I am true to my African race and African type. Before you became Englishmen, you were Anglo-Saxon by race. Before a man is born to a nation, he is conceived to a race. So his nationality is only accident, whilst his race is positive. I am positively a Negro. There is no mistake about it. Not one drop of anybody else's blood in my veins. If there were, I would try to get rid of it by draining it out as quickly as possible so that I could be 100% African, as you are 100% Anglo-Saxon. I respect you for your purity of blood, and you ought to respect me for my purity of blood. God intended us to have different outlooks from the social and political points of view. That is why geographically he suited you for Europe and suited me for Africa. If you go to America, you can hardly tell who is a Negro and who is not, because you have half-white Negroes, three-quarter white Negroes, 1/5 Negroes, 1/8 Negroes, 1/10 Negroes. You have a mixture there, all caused by the advantages you have taken off us by bringing us within the pale of your civilization. You call us colored people. Indeed, we are colored. The great trouble in America is to find out who is white. That is why the white American wants to get rid of the black man, so that it will not be a question of whether the American nation will be a mulatto nation or a black nation. America is no better than France. These two nations have got into trouble and cannot get out of it. You are sensible enough not to bring trouble home to England. That is why you are not interested. That is why you are not here to the number of 10,000 today. If I were in America, I would be addressing 25,000 people, because there is a real problem. It is a nightmare. Every white man in America goes to bed thinking that on the next day a Negro will be President of the United States of America. And judging by the way Negroes are running an independent ticket and acting against Hoover, it is likely we shall have a Negro president in America. But in case the Negroes are unable to elect a president of their own, I am throwing my support for Alfred Smith. Do you know why I am for Smith against Hoover? It is because Smith is a man from the people. Smith is a man who has sprung from the common people. He knows their wants and their heartbeats and their pulse. Hoover has been pampered by the monopolist class. He himself is a millionaire. He can only see American politics and American power from the capitalist point of view. You must have read of the great rubber combine in America. Hoover was one of the men responsible for sending me to prison because it was to America's interest. And not only that, but to the interest of certain American capitalists to have imprisoned me so that Hoover could back Firestone in Liberia in connection with the rubber lands, land which should have been disposed of to us by agreement with the Liberian government. When Firestone found there was a possibility of a shortage of rubber in America and there was nowhere where America could obtain rubber other than from England, they sent their commercial investigators all over the world and they found that it was possible for rubber to be grown in Liberia. Then Hoover backed up Firestone to get the president of Liberia to give up the contract he had entered into with me so that the American Negroes could repatriate themselves and help build up Liberia to have a permanent and peaceful home of their own. Hoover used his power as Secretary of Commerce not only to imprison me, but to take away from the Negroes a concession that had been given to them, and to give it to Firestone so that the natives of Liberia could be exploited for the benefit of American capital. 2 years after Firestone went there, he reduced the natives to virtual slavery. He got the government to use the natives to build roads to give access to his plantations. They had to work without proper provision for food and without any pay. Hoover represents in American life people who will do that. Through my organization, it is my duty before God and before man to see to it that a man like that, if possible, is not returned as President of the United States. Such a great country with such a great power can do so much good or ill. That is why I'm for Smith, a man who would not tolerate such a method in politics. A man who has been fair and square in all his dealings as governor of New York State. The Negroes of America can put their trust in him, and I hope he will be returned as President of the United States of America at the next election. In conclusion, God bless you, Englishmen and women. I trust that you will not take offense at anything I have said today. What I have said has been said so that you may adopt a policy and attitude towards us Negroes beyond what is being done to them today. I thank you, and God bless you.
You have just listened to an On a Level production.
In 1492, you came upon these shores, 700 years educated by the Moors. 17th century, genocide and the gun, middle passage blessed to market the Africans in the so-called lands of God. My kind were treated hard. From back then until now, I see and you agree. We have been a misrepresented people. From back then until now, just see my family tree. We have been a misrepresented people. We have been a misrepresented people.
You've just been listening to Marcus Garvey Speaks, originally delivered September 2nd, 1928.
19th century, slavery destroyed.
This concludes day 24, and we just want to thank Bishop Dr. Desmond Jadu for today's resurrection. Bishop Jadu is a minister and community activist. His focus has been on equality and social justice for the needs of the people. He's a firm believer that we can only make changes when we are prepared to step up and be counted and ensure that we're around decision-making tables. Bishop Jadu says, "It was a privilege to do the Marcus Garvey Project because he was a firm believer that we are a people of greatness. We would like to take our God-given place in society, socially and economically, for we have strength in both areas." The words of Marcus Garvey are an inspiration to keep us going in the fight against discrimination that we are faced with then and still today. We welcome your comments, opinions and feedback on the Resurrection and Marcus Garvey series so far. Should you wish to share, you can by email on onalevel@hotmail.co.uk. That's on-a-level@hotmail.co.uk. As you know, in this series, we are paying homage to Marcus Mosiah Garvey, as Black History Month is all about celebration. So join me to give a few shout outs, starting with Garvey's parents, Mama Sarah Jane Richards and Pops Marcus Garvey Sr. We also want to pay homage to those esteemed ancestors who paved the way for Marcus to appear on the world stage. We also pay homage to the graduates of the School of African Philosophy and all of the founding members and supporters of the UNIA. Last but not least, we pay special homage and tribute to his esteemed wife, Amy Jakes Garvey, who was a formidable leader in her own right. Mrs. Garvey kept her husband's legacy alive, and it is partly because of her loving efforts that we can share this groundbreaking series with you today. Tune in tomorrow at the same time for the resurrection of Marcus Mosiah Garvey. With me, Jermaine Brown.
He taught us to be men. Take away the wristbone and put in backbone like other men. I don't think we could expect anything better than that. While we were sleeping, he opened our eyes. We were lame, and we started to walk. We were blind, and we can see now. Through Garvey. Never happened before.
I'm going to leave you with the famous anthem that Marcus Garvey and the UNIA members had wanted to be adopted as the universal anthem for Black people across the globe. Let's take a moment to listen and feel free to wave your red, black and green flag should you have one.
Up your mighty race! You can accomplish what you will.
Ethiopia, thou land of our fathers, thou land where the gods love to be. A storm cloud at night suddenly gathers, all armies come rushing to thee. We must in the fight be victorious, when swords are thrust outward to gleam. For us will the victory be glorious, when led by the red, black and green. Advance, advance to victory, let Africa be free. Advance to meet the foe, advance to meet the foe, with the might of the red, the black and the green, with the might of the red, the black and the green. O Jehovah, thou God of the ages, grant unto our sons that need the wisdom thou gave to thy sages when Israel was sore in need. Thy voice to the dim past has spoken, Ethiopia shall stretch forth her hand. By thee shall all fetters be broken, and heaven bless our dear motherland. Advance, advance to freedom.